Hello, it's Sebastian here. I'm going to show you how to define your own recursive data types in Java. So I'm going to pretend that lists don't exist, and I'm going to try and redefine them in Java from scratch. So I'm going to create a file called list.java. So I'm going to define an abstract class list whose elements are of type T. Let's give it a capital L. And the functions that I'm going to start off, or the methods well, first of all, the methods I'm going to define are going to be head and tail. A list has a head and a tail. So we're going to have abstract head. Well, that's going to return an element of type T. So it's going to be called head, and it's going to let's give it no parameters like that. So we've got a head, and we've also got a tail method. And a tail returns the list, so it'll return a list of type T, and it will be called tail. And again, that won't take any parameters, so we can do it like that. So let's try compiling our list class. And that compiles okay. So now there are two sorts of lists. There's an empty list and a non-empty list. So let's first create a class for empty lists. So I'll call it empty list.java. So here's my new file, empty list.java, and I'm going to say public class empty list extends list. So it's a kind of list. We're extending this abstract class, and because we're extending the abstract class, we have to give we have to define two methods, head and tail, which match these. So if I copy these and put them in here, well, they're not going to be abstract anymore because empty list isn't an abstract class. It's going to implement the methods of the abstract class list. So head, well, the head of an empty list is an error. So we want to throw. We can try throw new exception can't take head of empty list. Now you can't take the tail of the empty list either, so we can do exactly the same. So let's try compiling our empty list thing. So there's some errors here. I've forgotten to put these quotes in here. There we go. I've got to give this a give both these generic parameters to match the t here. Let's try that. So here we've got to make these things throw exception. So we have to make these throw exception too, I think. Tail in empty list cannot override tail in list. Overridden method doesn't throw exception. What does that mean? The overridden method. Doesn't throw exception. What does that mean? What does that mean? Perhaps I haven't saved this one. Let's try again. That's better. Good. I just hadn't saved that one. So there we are. Those are our two programs so far. So now we want another one for the for non-empty lists. So I want to create a new class. I'm going to call it cons. So my cons thing is going to exactly, let's start off with this here. So that is going to have, it's going to be called cons. Now it's going to have, the cons is going to have two fields. It's going to have the head, which is going to be of type T, let's call it head, and it's going to have a tail, which is of type list, list of T. So there we go, list of T, tail. So those are the two fields, if you like, for my non-empty list. So now, to return the head of this list, we just want to return head. And for the tail, you've guessed it, we return tail. So we're returning the different fields. Now, because this has got two fields in it, we need a constructor for this class. So obviously that's got to have the same name. So it's going to have two parameters. The first one of type, we'll call it X of type T. The next one's going to be a list of type T. And we could call that one Y. So we'll call that Y, and for constructors we simply do what? We simply assign the parameters to the field. So it's head equals X, tail equals Y. So now let's try compiling our new class. Unreachable statement. What have I done here? It's that extra thing I put there. Great. So now we've got our abstract class, and then we have the two instantiations of it, the two extensions of it. It's either, so the abstract class has these two methods, and we have the version for the empty list and the version for the non-empty list. So it'd be useful if we could print out our lists. I think to be able to do anything with lists, we need to be able to print them out. So let's think of a nice way of printing out our lists. Well, so to print things out, we need a toString function method. So let's put toString. Well, toString is public string toString. So I'm putting that in the wrong place. I should put that in. I want to do one here for the empty list. Well, for the empty list, let's just simply return the string empty square brackets like that. So that's our empty list. That's what we're going to print when we get an empty list. What about a non-empty list? Well, it'd be nice to print out the elements of the list, say, separated by commas. So how would we do that? Well, we need some more things before we can do that. We need to be able to check whether a list is empty or not. So how do we check whether a list is empty or not? Well, we need an isEmpty method here. So that's going to be what's isEmpty going to look like? It's going to return a Boolean and it's going to be called isEmpty. So we've got to define isEmpty for the empty list and for a non-empty list. Well, it's pretty clear what we're going to have to do. For the empty list, we're going to have to return something. And for the non-empty list, we're also going to have to return something. Now, you should be able to guess that if the list is empty, we want to return true. and if the list isn't empty, we want to return false. So there we go. So let's compile these things again. Try again. Let's do the cons, and let's do the empty list. Return. I spelled that wrong. There we go. Save that. So now we've compiled that. So now we can get back to our toString. So what we want to do for the toString method for the non-empty list is we want to what do we want to do? We want to print all the elements of the list separated by commas, say, and put square brackets at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to what are we going to have to do? We're going to need this toString method here. Well, we're also going to need a method which puts all the elements, which separates all the elements out, puts commas between all the elements. So let's have another function called commas between, and that's going to return a string of all the elements. Right, so the first case is if the tail of the list is empty, then it's only got one element. So how do we check that? If tail dot is empty, return what? We want to return just the head dot toString. So we're calling the toString method of head. So otherwise we want to return the head dot toString. That's the plus a comma plus now we have to recursively do that on the tail, so it'll be tail dot commas between. Okay, so we get the head and print and put that in the string, put a comma, and then add to that we do the same thing to the tail. Now, so now what do we have to do to print out a non-empty string? We don't want to do that. We want to return an open bracket plus commas between, and then a close bracket. So let's just compile that to see what happens. Again, I seem to still have this return thing somewhere. Where's that? Return head to string plus tail dot commas between. Commas between. Perhaps I have to put this dot tail dot commas between. list.tail.commas commas between list.tail.commas between. Now what's it complaining about now? Well, I think I have to make an abstract version of it here because tail might be empty. Because this is a list of type T, so again we have to tell it about a commas between here. And then I have to have one of these here too. And I'll just return, in this case, I'll just return the empty string. So now let's try again, see if it's happy with that. I don't understand this error. This.al.commas between. So what's it saying here? List.tail is a list of T. Ah, that's because I haven't compiled this. I keep making that silly mistake. So everything compiles properly now. So I've got something for printing out strings. So let me write a program to test this out. So let's do listtest.java. So class listtest. So public static void main string args. So let's declare a string of integers, a list of integers. So we have list integer, let's call it A. Now to construct it you have to use new and cons. So we have to say, for example, new cons 1 new empty list. So that should be the list whose head is 1 and whose tail is empty. So if we print it out, it should print it out using the toString methods that we've defined. seem to compile. So let's run it. And it printed out 1. Now, suppose we wanted to print out the length of that list. So what's the length of that list? It's just got one element in it, so it should give us 1. Should we recompile it? And we see we haven't defined length. There's an error. We haven't defined length. So let's define length. So length of the list is the number of elements in the list. So what we do here is we define another method in our abstract class length. Abstract, so what I'm talking about, not abstract class, abstract int length. And then we have to define 2 versions of length, one in each of these things. So let's do int length and the length of the empty list, which is the one we're doing here, is going to be 0, and the length of the non-empty list, what's the length of the non-empty list going to be? And the length of the non-empty list is going to be 1 plus the length of the 1 for the head plus 1 for the length of the tail. So let's do that. So it'll be return 1 for the head plus the length of the tail, which is tail.length. Let's try compiling that. Again, I keep forgetting to save these things properly. Let's compile them separately. Right, so they've all compiled. Let's just compile the test program. So now if we run the test program, it prints out the length of that list is 1. So now let's try and make the list a little bit long. Let's make it a bit longer. So we can put a 2 in front of it. We could say new cons 2, comma, empty list. So now we've got a list whose head is 2 and whose tail is the list whose head is 1, and which has the tail empty list. So that should be the list 2, 1. So we print out. Let's print out the list and its length. So we'll print out A as well as the length of A. So we compile that and we run it. So it's the list 2, 1, 2, 1, and its length is 2.